Owning a flip phone always came with a bunch of compromises. At first, it seemed like everything was a compromise, but through the years, it's been cut down quite a bit. With the latest Z Flip 6, it's possible that Samsung has removed all compromises from the flip phone series. In this video, I'm going to dive deep into the Z Flip 6 and go over a bunch of the details that were changed, and at the end I want to see if there are any compromises left with the Flip series. Before we get started, just a reminder that liking and subscribing will really help this channel out. Now let's dive in. Starting off with the cover screen, there doesn't seem to be anything that's changed dramatically. The size of the cover screen, the aspect ratio, the pixels per inch is all the same, and so it's widely going to be the same experience. However, when it comes to the software of the cover screen, it has changed a little bit. It's now a little bit nicer and flows a little bit better than the Z Flip 5's version, but it's still not at the level of the Razr Plus. The main thing that comes to mind is that the default app drawer on the Z Flip 6 is still very limited on the apps that can be added onto it. You still need to download GoodLock and use the GoodLock's version of the app drawer in order to get the full functionality. A quick note on this one though, I'm not going to count it as a compromise because it's not even available on standard phones anyway. So it's just something that I noticed and I feel should be fixed by Samsung. Since I'm working my way from the outside in, the next one is actually one of the major ones, and it's the camera. Visually, we're getting larger bumps, but it makes sense because we're also getting larger sensors. So you got to accommodate that, and there's not exactly a lot of space in these phones to fit them internally. So the main sensor, and it looks like the ultrawide as well, are the same as what's found on the S24. And even though the S24 is the base S model, it still had better cameras than the Z Flip series. So in terms of camera, that's a major improvement. The sensor size was increased from 1/1.76 to 1/1.56. And that's a pretty big improvement. If my math is correct, that's about a 10% or a little bit more of an improvement compared to last year's model in terms of camera sensor size, and that's going to help with getting more light into the photo and going to get you a clearer photo. Along with the larger sensor, we also get an increase in megapixels from 12 to 50. And this should open up a bunch of opportunity to use the main sensor in different ways that would help the Z Flip stand out from the standard style phones. Unfortunately, some of the improvements that I wanted weren't included with the Z Flip 6 at launch at least. Hopefully they come at a later point. One of them being that it doesn't have 8K recording. I mean, it has the same processor and same sensor as the S24, and that one has 8K. So it must be something with the heat dissipation that's keeping Samsung from adding it to the Flip series. Another feature that it doesn't have is portrait mode in Ultra HD. And the base S24 also has that one, but again, it could be limited because of heat dissipation. And the last one that I really wanted, because it would have been unique to the Z Flip 6 in terms of how functional it would have been, is being able to record in Ultra HD when the phone is in the flex mode and recording horizontally. So basically, it's recording on a 9:16 instead of 16:9 aspect ratio. What that does is that it basically crops in on the sensor and gives you that aspect ratio. But before, the limitation was that there weren't enough pixels to make that happen in Ultra HD. With 50 megapixels, there should be enough pixels to make that happen. But again, that could be another heat issue, or maybe it's just something they haven't even thought of yet. Continuing on with the outside, the back plate is probably 99% the same, if not 100% the same. The only thing is that I got the carbon fiber looking one, and I wasn't sure how it was going to look when I bought it, but when I saw it in person, it was an awesome one. One thing about it has texture, so it might help a little bit with grip, maybe not too much, but it just feels kind of cool. And definitely looks pretty cool in person as well. And then continuing on with the rails, they definitely went to what's pretty much 100% flat rail. So it's gonna be a little bit less comfortable than holding the last year's model. But it's not a heavy phone and it still fits nicely in your hand, so it's not gonna be anything too bad anyway. With the flat rails, it definitely feels like you have more of a hand on it when you're holding it. And even though it's not any thicker, it definitely feels like you're holding a thicker phone. So maybe sensory wise, it might feel like a bigger phone, but it's the same thing. I don't notice too much with the Hinge, and even when I compare it next to the Z Flip 5, I just can't tell any difference. I just know that it works really well, probably a little bit better than the Flip 5. So it's just an improvement, and now it has dust resistance, so definitely props on that. So now when we open the phone, we're going to be introduced with the new bumper system that Samsung went with. And it's so much better than the Flip 5 and the generations before that. So with the Flip 5, they used to have two little bumpers on the bottom, and that will create the gap so the phone will be flush. However, that left a gap where dust can get in. Even though it wasn't a big gap and not much got in, it still didn't have a super nice look to it. With the Flip 5, they went the route of the OnePlus Open where they have a border that goes all the way around basically. And when the two halves close, it creates a nice seal. There is still the tiniest gap when you get close to the hinges, but that's not gonna let much in. And so one is that it looks way better, and two is that it's gonna provide way better protection from dust, at least against the screen. And it feels like they did this without really raising the bumper too much or at all really. I can't really tell a difference in height there. So it's not affecting the feel of the phone or the functionality of the main screen at all. Next, the selfie camera on the main screen is fine. It works the same. I don't think it was upgraded from the Z Flip 5, but it's not really a camera that I even focus on, especially with the flip phones because I never use it. I only use it to unlock or make video calls. But if I'm going to take a picture, I'm definitely going to be using the main sensors on a flip phone. There's just no point in using the selfie camera. Moving on down to the main screen, it feels pretty much the same. The colors are great. The brightness is actually improved, which is nice. The crease feels a little bit shallower than the Flip 5, and it actually is barely noticeable anymore at this point. And when you're watching the videos or whatever, I just don't notice it at all anymore unless there's some bright light that's being reflected onto it. So the crease is not exactly at the point of the Razr Plus yet, so you are going to feel it a bit more and you are going to see it a little bit more. But it's really not a deal breaker if that's the only issue. With the main screen, you're still getting the 120 Hz refresh rate and the over 400 pixels per inch screen resolution. So you're going to have a good experience using the main screen on this phone, just like you did with the previous generations. And the main screen was brightened up to 2600 nits, which matches the S24 base. And I think that's Samsung's goal in this generation, which is remove all compromises. And so basically it's matching the S24 pretty closely up to this point. The next one's very important, which is the battery. And this was upgraded to a 4000 milliamp hour battery, which takes away that compromise 100%. That actually matches the S24 perfectly. Before, the battery size was always an issue because you just couldn't fit a battery that was large enough to match the slab phones. And even though Samsung has the smallest batteries on slab phones for the most part, it's still a good sign that the Flip series was able to catch up to the S24. I'm actually really excited to test this one out on the full day challenge to see if it'll last like the S24 did. Theoretically, it should be lasting just as long, so it should pass the full day challenge, which would make it the first flip phone to last a full day, unless I test the Razr first. We'll see. Alright, so now we're moving on to the RAM, and this one is actually more of an improvement even from the base model than it is just removing a compromise. So the base S24 still has 8GB of RAM, and the Z Flip 5 had 8GB of RAM. I never had an issue with the 8GB, but I know that the AI features do require a bit of RAM. So having the 12GB that the Z Flip 6 was upgraded to is definitely going to be beneficial, and it's kind of going to future-proof the phone. Moving on to the software, there are some cool new features that were added to the Z Flip 6. The main ones that were advertised are the AI Composer for emails and messages, and the AI, what I call the AI Doodle or the Sketchpad. So obviously, yeah, the Composer is going to be useful, especially if you're having a writer's block one day and you just need something to get you going. That's going to help you to get the information, or at least some sort of draft. It's probably not going to be used all that much, especially since I don't think too many people even work from a phone. And in terms of everyday conversations, you're not going to be worried too much about composing a proper email or message. So it could be useful, maybe especially for those that use a phone a lot more for business. But moving on to the AI Doodle, I know that one is not important at all, and I'm sure no one would even notice that they don't have it, but I've had so much fun with it that it's actually my favorite AI feature that's come out so far. I've actually spent too much time playing around with it, taking a picture and then drawing stuff on it. I also did the portrait effect one, which is really cool. It's kind of a way to create like an avatar or even a sticker based on a portrait photo. And I think it looks pretty cool. So it's a cool feature, but it's just about it. It's cool. It's not necessarily a must-have. And lastly, I want to talk about the support. So Samsung came out with 7 years of OS and security support for the Z Flip 6 and Z Fold 6. And yeah, that's great. And the hardware, or at least the internals, could definitely handle 7 years of being used. But I'm just not too sure that the screen and hinge are just gonna last that long. Based on Samsung's numbers, the hinges could handle over 200,000 folds, which comes out to over 10 years of use, or about 10 years of use, depending on, I guess, who's using it. So theoretically, it should last that long, but the fact that the main screen has plastic layers and is always being moved on a material that's really not supposed to be folded all that much is kind of worrisome to me, at least. I don't know if that'll last 7 years. And if it does, I don't know if it's gonna last 7 years for everyone. Hopefully I'm wrong though. Hopefully these phones last 7 years without any issues. That would be awesome. Because I'm pretty sure that if foldables were 100% as reliable as the slab counterparts, they will probably be selling a lot more than the slab phones. So overall, there are plenty of upgrades to the Z Flip 6 that are going to make the user experience much better. But going back and focusing on the compromises, are there really any left? We have the RAM, which is not a compromise. We have the battery, which is no longer a compromise. We have the screen brightness, which is not a compromise anymore. We got the cameras, which isn't being compromised anymore. We have software that's not even available on slab phones, so that's definitely not a compromise. And then we get to the dust and water resistance. Water resistance is not a compromise, but we're still compromising a little bit on dust resistance. And beyond that, we still have the movable hinge and screen, which could be considered a compromise if they're not lasting as long as slab phones. But it seems we're at a point where folding phones are a viable option. They're no longer compromising on so many things that it's gonna ruin your user experience. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about the improvements made to the Z Flip 6? And what do you still want to see improved? Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.